Good evening. Welcome to the October 2nd, 2023 meeting of the Lake Oswego Development Review Commission. Our meeting will now come to order. Administrator Kluge, would you please call the roll of commissioners present?
Arthur.
Here.
Poinsett.
Here.
Sangre.
Here.
Dews.
Here.
Bates.
Here.
Leak.
Here.
O'Connor.
Here. Excellent. Welcome to all the commissioners and to Vice Chair Poinsett. We have a full complement of commissioners tonight. Our first agenda item is to welcome City Councilor Trudy Corrigan to provide a City Council update. And we look forward to your report. Good evening.
Work, it's appreciate it. Here we go with the update from City Council for September. We proclaimed September as National Recovery Month and National Hispanic Heritage Month. We approved a resolution to authorize the city manager to execute an intergovernmental agreement with the Clackamas County Health, Housing, and Human Services Department Social Services Division for fiscal year 2023 and 2024, and that relates to funding for the ACC. We made a motion to direct staff to initiate vacation proceedings with pursuant to ORS 271-130 for a 6-foot wide portion of public right-of-way, and that is adjacent to the Habitat for Humanity project. Then we had a comprehensive 2023 legislative session recap from Madison Thiesing, who's the assistant to the city manager. We also had a comprehensive study session from Eric Olson, our long-range planning manager, with regard to the climate-friendly and equitable communities rules. And those are comprehensive parking rules that they're being mandated by the state. And we also sent a letter to Clackamas County Planning Department to support their adoption of the local park master plan, adoption framework amendments to the Clackamas County Comp Plan, and zoning and development ordinance for Lusher Farms. At our next meeting, we had an update from the Arts Council on the LORAC Project Percent for Art program status, and we got to look at some great art. And personally, I was very excited that the Red Man, we haven't seen him in a while, but it's a large metal statue, will be at the entry to the LORAC. That was from Nicole Nathan, who is our executive director for the Arts Council. Then we proclaimed September Meals on Wheels Month. We also approved the co-chair appointments for the Public Art Committee and approved the 2023-2024 Neighborhood Enhancement Grant application from First Edition Neighbors, Forest Hills. Then we had a study session on the Vertical Housing Development Zone Pilot Program from Eric Olson. And we met then as the LoRa board and had an update on the North Anchor project update. And that also involved a discussion with the vertical housing credits. And that's what we did, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Are there any questions for Commissioner Corrigan? I was interested in your comment about the Vertical Housing Development Zone pilot work session. Is there anything more you can tell us about the status of that or where it goes next, if anywhere?
Well, I think the reason that we're discussing it now is because there is a possible application to the North Anchor project. It will require more study. We don't have all the numbers yet, but we're learning about it. And that seems to be kind of a well-timed project to try it out before, if we were to take it larger in the city.
Is there anything more you could tell us about the status of the North Anchor project?
Well, Well, what can I tell you about
Now, you
that?
may have had an executive session, maybe it's not
Yeah.
something you can
Well,
divulge.
what I can tell you is we are getting updates regularly, monthly, and it looks as though they will come back for an extension. They've told us that they will do that. So we're still working on it. That's really where we're at on it. So thank you for asking.
Well, we appreciate it, and thank you so much for being here in
I have a
person.
quick question.
Yes.
Sure.
Is there an update on the affordable housing? There's financing that's been being lined up for the affordable housing project on Boones Ferry
The
Road?
hacienda. I think Metro had some money, but it hasn't been approved yet. It was a big number, too. I'm not sure if anybody else is attuned to that. It's kind of partly, is that right?
Well, Metro wouldn't be funding at all. It would be a private partnership, private-public.
Yeah, it may be that you are more attuned to it than I am, having putting the time with the Planning Commission. I'm not sure.
I don't have any numbers for you, but I can tell you that the Clackamas County Commissioners did approve the project in concept, and that they are expecting the development and disposition agreement negotiations to occur over the next 12 to 18 months or so. And in the meantime, we would expect them to submit an application to the city to start their land use approval process. So that is the firm update that I can give you. I don't have any specific numbers for you on the funding of the project.
What was the concept that they approved? I mean, what does that mean? It sounds like it's still not anything solid.
Right, so the concept plan, it's a concept plan for the site that includes, I believe, about 50 units of housing, and just sort of the overall development concept, but it doesn't have all the details. It's not they don't have the construction plans created or
Right,
anything
I know
like
that.
that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Chair, just for the record, of course, this inquiry is not regarding matters before the commission and personal interest only.
Thank you, Deputy City Attorney. And thank you very much, Councilor Corrigan, for being here this evening. We always appreciate your detailed reports.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item relates to approval of the draft minutes of the September 18th, 2023 meeting of the DRC. The draft has been circulated in advance to commissioners. Commissioners, are there any suggested edits to this draft? If not, are there any motions?
Yes, I will move approval of the minutes of September 18.
I second.
Very good. All in favor say yes.
Yes?
Yes. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Very good. Those minutes are approved as submitted. Excuse me. Our next agenda item relates to a public hearing on LU 23-0025. Now, this is a request for approval of a conditional use permit for a golf course use, as well as modification to a development permit for an addition and new expanded covered patio onto the golf shop, sometimes called Murphy's Building. The site is located at 20 Iron Mountain Boulevard, and the staff coordinator for this evening's public hearing is Evan Fransted, Senior Planner. Before going into the public hearing, I'll ask the city attorney to lead us into the hearing, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's see. The public hearing process will be as follows. First, there will be a presentation by staff, then testimony by the applicant up to 20 minutes, then testimony by parties in support of the application, followed by testimonies opposed to the application, and finally, testimony by those neither for nor against the application. Individuals will be allowed up to 5 minutes, and any person in attendance may cede his or her time for testimony to another person except to the applicant. But in no case shall any person's testimony be increased to greater than 10 minutes. Recognized neighborhood associations, homeowner associations, government or government agencies, or other incorporated public interest organizations will be allowed up to 10 minutes. Those time limits do not include time spent responding to questions from the commission, testimony by attorneys, representatives, and witnesses, on behalf of which a part of the presentation by a person shall be counted within that person's time limit. It is assumed the person is testifying on their own behalf unless they expressly identify the recognized neighborhood association, homeowner association, government or government agency, or other incorporated public interest organization they're representing. After testimony in favor, opposed, and neither for nor against in the applicant's rebuttal, if needed, up to 5 minutes. Followed by commission deliberation, including a statement by the applicant, to the applicant by the commission of proposed conditions of approval different than contained in the staff report, and the applicant's response to the commission's conditions of approval proposed following the commission deliberation. As stated in the public notice, the deadline for submission of written materials was noon today. No written materials may be submitted to the commission tonight. Any person may request an opportunity to present additional evidence by requesting a continuation of the public hearing. This land use request is to be considered based upon the applicable criteria and standards, which is listed in the staff report, which is available online and from the planning department. Testimony and evidence must be directed towards the applicable criteria. We ask you to identify the criteria standards you're addressing so the commission may consider that testimony in relation to the criteria or standards. If you do not, then the commission is not obliged to guess which standards or criteria you're testifying about and may not consider your testimony in its decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the commission the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes raising the issue to the City Council and the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. The failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with specificity to allow the commission to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. A potential conflict of interest declared on behalf of each of the DRC members to the extent of business or employment, which each will identify. Unless declared otherwise, the respective DRC member does not have a known, present, or anticipated future business relationship with the project or the applicant. It is possible that future business relationship could arise in the initiation, design, construction, or maintenance of the project through either the employment or business of the DRC member personally, or through relatives defined in ORS 244-020. At this point, I would ask the commission members to please declare if you've had any ex parte contacts, including a site visit. If you have any bias on the application, any financial conflicts of interest declared, and please state your business or employment. Mr. Sangre.
My name is Dwight Sangre. I am a retired civil engineer. I am familiar with the site in a general sense. I have not visited the site recently. I am in no way related to the project. I'm not a member of the club, nor have I ever been. And I have no bias, no financial relationship, and have had no ex parte discussions relating to this project.
I am Helen Leek. I am a real estate broker in Lake Oswego. I have no biases. I have been to the site many times. I played golf at Oswego Lake and been a member. But I have no biases, and I have no financial interest in the project.
I'm Bruce R. Poinsett. I'm a semi-retired construction safety consultant. Have had no contact, no biases, have not even visited the site. So no conflicts of interest.
Good evening. I'm Randy Arthur. I'm a civil litigation attorney with the Portland office of Blvd Bailey Law Firm. I've had no ex parte contacts. I've not made a site visit. I have no financial interest. I'm not a member of the club. I'm not a golfer. And I have no disqualifying prejudice that would affect my view of the application. Commissioner Dews?
My name is John Dews. I am an architect. I am familiar with the site, but I have not made a specific site visit. I have had no ex parte contacts, nor do I have any bias or financial conflict of interest.
My name is Russ O'Connor. I'm a retired construction project manager. I have no financial conflicts, no bias. I've not been to the site, and I'm aware of the site, but I haven't been there. And I have no ex parte contact.
Kristen Bates. I'm a real estate attorney with a firm out of Seattle. I've had no ex parte contact. I have no site visit. I'm generally familiar with the site. I am not a club member. I don't have any biases nor any financial benefits.
Thank you. Is there any challenge to Commissioner's right to consider the application? Seeing none, Evan Fransted, Senior Planner with staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Boone and members of the Commission. The applicant requests approval of a conditional use permit for a golf course use and modification to a development review permit for an addition and new expanded covered patio onto the golf shop Murphy's building. The site is approximately 119 acres with 2 tax lots. The site has frontages on Country Club Road, Iron Mountain Boulevard, Fairway Drive, and Ridgecrest Drive. The site contains Oswego Lake Country Club, an 18-hole golf course with 1 putting green and several existing buildings supporting the golf course use. The country club has been in operation since 1924. The site is zoned R10. Properties to east and west are also zoned R10, and properties to south are zoned R15. Excuse me. All are developed with single-family dwellings. The two properties to the northwest are zoned Parks and Natural Area, PNA, a city-owned open space. Properties to the north across Country Club Road are zoned R10, R5, and located in unincorporated Clackamas County, and are developed with single-family dwellings and a church. The site slopes generally from south to north towards Country Club Road. The site includes matured trees interspersed throughout the property. No tree removal is proposed as part of this application. The existing building, this photo shows the existing building with a golf shop, Murphy's Building, outlined white. The building was constructed in 2004 and is not a historic landmark. The building on the right is the golf cart barn that was constructed at the same time. Here's a larger site plan that shows the exterior alterations in relation to the existing clubhouse building and parking lots. This is a zoomed-in plan that shows the new covered outdoor area and expanded patio area with new landscaping and cart path. The proposal expands the outdoor patio area by 1,286 square feet. And here's the Murphy's lower level floor plan. It shows the proposed 150 square foot addition in orange. The proposed addition and covered patio comply with the R10 dimensional standards for setbacks, maximum lot coverage, floor area, and height. Here's the upper level and roof plan that shows a pro shop area. The expanded canopy roof area is the solid area. And here's perspective drawing, artistic rendering that shows the design of the building from the southwest with a new covered patio. And the elevation plans show the details of the building materials. The plans demonstrate the proposed building materials integrate with a design of the existing historic clubhouse building and the nearby cart club stores building. Proposed addition and expanded cover patio include matching wood shingles, wood soffit and trim, wood windows and basalt stone columns, and planters that integrate into the existing building design, and is likewise complementary to the design of the existing buildings remaining on site. The roof line of the new canopy for the covered patio aligns with the height of the existing eaves and provides matching details as the existing building. Staff finds the applicant's narrative along with the proposed elevations and site plan demonstrate the proposal complies with the applicable building design criteria. And for the conditional use, the requested conditional use permit is for the golf course use on the whole site and the expansion of the golf shop Murphy's Building. The reason for this is because the existing golf course was annexed in the city in 1999, and no conditional use permit has been approved for the golf course use in the city. A golf course is a conditional use in the R10 zone. The applicant seeks a conditional use permit for the golf course, thereby converting it from existing non-conforming use to a permitted conditional use. The first conditional use criterion is the requirements of the zone are met. As I mentioned, the dimensional standards for the R10 zone are met, so criterion 1 is met. For criterion 2, there are no use-specific standards that apply to golf course use, so this criterion is not applicable. For criterion 3, this requires the site is physically capable of accommodating the proposed use. The site is 119 acres. The golf course has been operating on the site since 1924. The vast majority of the golf course is landscaped open space. The longstanding use of the site as a golf course and associated buildings demonstrate the site is physically capable of accommodating the golf course use on the site. Additionally, the proposed new exterior building modifications to the golf shop Murphy's Building and outdoor patio area are considered a small expansion given the scope of the site. Given the large size of the site and the 100-year history of existing in the neighborhood, staff concludes the site is able to accommodate both the existing golf course operation and the proposed alterations to the golf shop Murphy's Building. Criterion 3 is met. Criterion 4 requires the functional characteristics of the proposed use are such that it can be made reasonably compatible with uses in the vicinity. The surrounding area includes single-family residences and a church. The residential properties abut the golf course perimeter, as is typical for a golf course. No public comments have been received on the application. The absence of any comments from the neighbors that would be most directly affected by the proposed conditional use is some evidence that the golf course is reasonably compatible with the uses in the vicinity. Staff also notes that to a large extent, the surrounding neighborhood grew up around the golf course founded 100 years ago. Staff finds proposed expansion of the golf course Murphy's building is consistent with the current level of usage on the site and will have minimal impacts to the budding uses in the area due to the far proximity. The existing parking lot includes 190 parking spaces for employee and customer vehicles, which meets the minimum parking requirements. No changes to existing parking lots or parking lot lighting are proposed. Staff considers the main impacts to budding uses in the vicinity of the golf course are traffic and noise from employees and customer vehicles, as well as customers playing golf on the site. The applicant submitted a traffic generation memo, which analyzes the area affected by the existing golf course. The submitted memo states that because no increase in the number of holes or acres of the golf course, no new trips will be generated than exist today. Therefore, staff finds that golf course traffic is reasonably compatible with uses in the vicinity. Similar to traffic, the existing golf course operation and proposed addition will expand the patio area of the golf shop Murphy's building will have no noise impacts in the surrounding residential properties. Given the nature of the use and sufficient distance to nearby residents, the proposed alterations to the building are over 300 feet to the nearest residence. The amount of noise generated on site with the new vehicles leaving the site is expected to be the same as exists today. Staff finds the functional characteristics of the golf course and proposed alterations to the Murphy's building are reasonably compatible with uses in the vicinity. This criterion is met. Staff finds the golf course use as exists today, and together with the proposed addition and expanded area for the golf course for the golf shop Murphy's building meets the general use criteria. In conclusion, staff recommends approval of LU 23-0025 with recommending conditions. This concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you, Senior Planner Fransted. Commissioners, are there questions at this point or comments directed to our professional staff? Hearing none, we would like to invite the applicant then to come forward. The applicant owner, as you've heard, is Oswego Lake Country Club. I believe the applicant's representative is GBD Architects, Inc., and Mr. Matthew Bray. Mr. Bray, welcome. Good evening.
Thank you. Having me. Is that on now? Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. Evan gave a great overview of the entirety of the project here, and though kind of minuscule in its size and scale relative to the overall course, it's still very impactful relative to its design. As Evan described, there are 3 separate primary buildings on site: the existing clubhouse building here, the Murphy's golf shop, which we'll talk about, and the cart barn. Both the 2 buildings, Murphy's golf shop and the cart barn, were constructed in 2004. This is an enlarged view and general kind of indication of the ramifications and impact to the overall site in total. As was mentioned, the existing building here, though constructed in 2004, has already become somewhat antiquated in its serviceability and operations. And interestingly enough, when it was constructed, there's a very nice articulated patio to the south, which faces the golf course. However, it's only 460 square feet in size. It's elevated both in its topography to the exterior as well as elevated from the floor level on the interior of the space. So as a universally accessible building, it does not technically meet that requirement and makes it a bit challenged for some of the aging members and abilities of the membership out at the course. This gives you a little character of the perimeter here and areas kind of that will be impacted. There's a series of basalt cascading walls that flank stair access around the perimeter, basically providing access to that elevated patio and surrounding landscape. So taking a look at what could be expanded for seasonal use, The desire was not only to modify the interior to provide a better flow and operation, but provide that flow directly to the exterior, which effectively means lowering the exterior patio to align with the interior floor level of the existing building. With any expansion and the sensitivity to the wonderful kind of architectural character that has been established on site and on this overall golf course campus, we looked to extract that patio language that applies the arts and crafts architecture that's well kind of defined and established here on campus, as well as some English kind of details that have found its way into the project. So looking at, again, clear-story windows, projected kind of garden room, as it were, as an attachment and extension of the existing building. As it was indicated earlier, the building is set back considerably within kind of the heart and center of the campus and away from the existing neighborhood. And as part of the overall canopy expansion, looking at the architectural ramifications to aligning and fusing that new covered porch and patio, we created a new living room, only 150 square feet as an interior usable space. It's a seating area that provides an indoor-outdoor fireplace, so covered from the exterior, and obviously the wonderful ambiance on the interior. But that has helped us kind of define and distinguish both the new architecture as well as the existing. So providing a bit of kind of pause and separation between the architectural languages and the existing and new building. As was discussed earlier, the orange area illustrates where that new addition would occur. What this allows us to do is actually truncate and abbreviate the current roof structure, which extends and wraps around the side. Aesthetically, currently, the wayfinding is a little confused in that you kind of enter the side door of the ground floor of the building. This will actually help kind of articulate and create a more prominent ground floor entry to Murphy's itself, as well as kind of provide that separation from the exterior patio and the interior space. Here you can see the magnitude and extent of that overall patio. It was previously only about 18 feet in length, and now the depth is extended to about 34 feet in overall total. So the overall square footage of that patio becomes almost 1,746 square feet, if we're being specific, which almost quadruples the usable area for seating. Approximately 1,000 square feet of that is covered by the new roof structure. And then this is where you can see where we have a 4-panel new door system that provides one panel with a swing operation, as well as it has bifold details. So in those wonderful weather months, we can open it up in its entirety and let all that activity spill in and out of the building. Again, improving the flow and serviceability, as well as just the ambiance overall and usability for the entire facility. This illustrates the extent of the roof above. Again, it's a 2-tiered roof. There's a lower roof here that aligns with established architectural datums at about 9 feet to the bottom, and then an upper roof with a windowed kind of clear story. Not only that allows daylight to get in, but this then responds architecturally to the sloping topography up to the building, as well as other kind of architectural elements within the building with windows, roofs, and other areas that we had to kind of work to refine and respect on the existing structure. This just indicates kind of the extent of change here. This is the ground floor. Currently, the food service is up against the south kind of wall, which is where we're actually removing and kind of relocating to the west wall there to provide that clear access through the south side. There are some minor modifications to the second floor, which is the golf shop. Most of those are purely interior, mostly updating retail fixturing. There's the addition of a small dressing room, improvements to back-of-house areas. But where we have affected the exterior of the building with the roof and have increased the height of the roof to the underside of the windows, there will be windows overlooking the course from the pro shop. But we have some new casework that aligns to the backside of that wall. So again, small amount of selective demo on the south, west, and east portions of the building. And starting to present, again, that large 4-panel kind of opening here. These windows do not change in their overall width. They just come up in height to address and kind of engage the new canopy and kind of building structure here. So you can see, though flat in its approach, where all other kind of roofs on most of the buildings here on site are highly sloped, gabled, shedded, though it does take a bit of a modern or contemporary departure, it still works well with, again, all the architectural alignments here and applies that garden room extension. This just demonstrates the list of materials that, again, are compatible with the existing building and intended to apply the asphalt shingles of the existing roof, the painted cedar shake siding, concrete, painted tongue and groove wood siding, punched and gridded articulated windows, and of course that large sliding kind of door, and as well as concrete and basalt materials. Lighting for the building has been both direct and indirect, so there are no kind of glaring fixtures out toward any of the neighboring buildings or properties. The upper kind of clear story roof provides a perimeter direct indirect kind of light fixture that will help wash the underside of the upper roof. And then there's a series of down lights here, as well as perimeter heaters, which will again help expand kind of the usability and seasonability of the entire building. This just illustrates kind of the general light levels, which are provided more for kind of dining and ambiance. So what is not covered by the roof area itself and or redirected is the flow and water patterns are directed to a new stormwater planter along the south edge of the planter. This has been designed to conform to all city requirements. The soils reports dictate that they're about heavy silt or clay soils 7 to 9 feet with bedrock below. So percolation and infiltration is not ideal. Therefore, a fully kind of lined stormwater planter was the approach here. And this catchment area is just kind of a recessed area that is then again flanked by some rerouting of golf cart traffic around the sides. This area will be heavily planted by landscaping, which again will fill in and be activated by the stormwater itself, as well as provide a softer transition between the building and the rest of the golf course, and hopefully not consume too many golf balls. Here's some other conceptual renderings here. You can see, again, the lower roof area, how that aligns with current and existing kind of soffit areas there as they exist, and then the upper kind of clear story area, and its alignment with the bottom end of the roof. This then wraps around the side. You can see where the indoor-outdoor fireplace would occur. The intent is to put a screen up here, not only for entertainment purposes, but when events are hosted and tournaments, that will give a electronic kind of scoreboard moment here. We do have a fire pit that anchors this outer edge, and because of the proximity to its 9th green, we've lovingly called this the heckle deck, so you can tease your fellow compadres and family as they come in on the 9th hole there. And here's a view from the other, other angle here. So you can see, again, stormwater planter wrapping the south side of the patio with that fireplace element and seating, flexible seating that will spill out both outside and underneath the new canopy. And here's just an image of how that kind of steps up and what the extent of that larger opening will ultimately reveal. And this demonstrates, again, just kind of the general glow and ambiance here of the lighting conditions around the perimeter of the building. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that presentation. Commissioners, are there questions of the applicant's representative? I just wanted to clarify, so am I correct, your application as presently framed is for approval of a conditional use permit for the golf course use for the entire site?
Correct.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll now turn to testimony from the public. I did want to acknowledge and recognize our immediate past chair, Jeff Shearer, who's in the audience tonight. Jeff, did you have a comment, either pro, against, or neutral relating to the project?
No, Matt did great.
Is there anyone wishing to, from the public, wishing to testify in favor of the application, either in person or online? Is there anyone wishing to testify in opposition to the application, either in person or online? Is there anyone wishing to testify neither for nor against, but wishing to express an opinion relating to the application, either in person or online? Seeing none, I'll turn to City Attorney Boone for direction at this point as to rebuttal.
Well, there wouldn't be any rebuttal. However, prior to closing the public hearing, since the applicant's the only one present, does the applicant wish to request an opportunity to present additional evidence?
No.
No. Does the applicant wish to file written arguments in support of the application within the next 7 days? No. No. You may proceed to deliberation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, are there any questions at this point of the professional staff? Then we can proceed to deliberations. What are your thoughts on the pending application and presentation, if any?
I think it's a slam dunk. It's well-designed. It fits in with the site. It doesn't bother the neighbors. I'm all for it.
Thank you for that comment. Commissioner Leek?
I agree with that, and just the fact, I appreciate that with the redesign, lowering the patio and making the access from an ADA standpoint, I think is really well appreciated.
That's a good point. Any other thoughts at this point in the way of deliberations? Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we approve LU 23-0025 as conditional use permit and modification as specified by staff's writings.
I'll second that.
Both Commissioner Bates and Commissioner Sangre seconded Commissioner Leek's motion. Any further discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Arthur?
Yes.
Fransted?
Yes.
Sangre?
Yes.
Dews?
Yes.
Bates?
Yes.
Leek?
Yes.
O'Connor?
Yes.
7-0.
Very good. Will staff come back with draft
We
findings?
will come back with written findings, it's a tentative decision back to you on October 16, and I'm advised that there may be a short agenda, very short agenda.
There are no other items scheduled for October 16th, so as is what per usual practice, if you would like to meet via Zoom earlier at 6 p.m., since that's the only item for business, the commission would like to do that, then you may do so.
Commissioner, is there a consensus to meet at 6 via Zoom for the October 16th meeting?
That makes sense.
That makes sense.
As I alerted Vice Chair Poinsett, I will not be present on October 16th, unfortunately, so I will ask to be excused from that meeting. I'll be en route from the East Coast.
Of course. Vice.
So I thank Vice Chair Poinsett in advance. for his leadership of that meeting. We now move to a work session, and I'm just very pleased to welcome and acknowledge Director Numanoglu, who for years supported the DRC as, I believe, planning manager or deputy community director, and is now community director, but it's very nice to have you here. And you were very instrumental in our work session, helping organize that at the beginning of the year, where we on the commission went over a number of questions just in the logistics of operating our meeting and issues that sometimes arose. And with Director Numanoglu's direction and inspiration at work, she suggested transferring that into a public testimony guide for citizens, something that citizens could refer to and that we could refer them to so that they could be prepared or briefed on what to expect when they came to speak at a DRC meeting. So that's included in our packet. And also, there were a number of other issues. Rather, there was an issue, and I want to recognize our Transportation Director, Erica Rooney, who's here this evening. Thank you for staying late and being with us tonight to review some of this. And then over the years, as it turns out, over the last 2 or 3 years, from time to time, the DRC has directed that memoranda be sent to the Planning Commission, the City Council, or the professional staff on various issues. And I think Director Numanoglu and the Transportation Director will update us on all those things. So I want to welcome Director Erica Rooney and Jessica Numanoglu.
Well, thank you, Chair Arthur, for that wonderful introduction and summary. And as Chair Arthur noted at the last study session that we had, which was February 6th of this year, it did get continued. We went a little bit long, and it got continued. And unfortunately, we've been trying to reschedule it, but the DRC agenda has been too full, or the schedules just haven't aligned with everyone. So there's several of you who probably weren't at that first study session. I know that you weren't at this first study session. Certainly, if you wanted to go back and take a look at the tape, it is online. We did discuss a number of issues, as the chair mentioned. You know, a refresher on the scope of the DRC review, how, you know, what to do on site visits, all of that. But I do think many of the issues are covered in this public testimony guide, which was distributed to the commission. And just for your information, when we drafted this up, we did send it around for the commission just to have them take a look at it, and got comments back which have been incorporated. This has been online for a few months now, but certainly if you see any, if you have any suggestions or any additions, we do update our handouts from time to time and as needed. So always open to any suggestions that the commission has.
Commissioner Leek?
My suggestion is anytime someone signs up for public testimony that they are strongly encouraged to read this.
You know, we provide, well, I'll have to check with our admin staff. I think when someone does sign up, we probably should provide them a link to that document, and I'll make sure that that happens.
Because one of the things in the document says, learn what the statutes say pertaining to the issue to which you're about to speak. And time again, we spend hours here vetting or listening to people who don't want trees cut down because of their aesthetics or their environmental impact. And none of those issues are germane to our discussions. It would cut down a lot of everybody's time if maybe before we do discussions like that, again, we reference that document, but we also go over, the chair goes over to the audience what is and isn't allowed, not that it's not allowed, but what is germane to the discussion and what isn't. Because that would cut out, I would say, in my short term here, half of the people the testimony.
Well, I think your suggestion, Commissioner Leek, that somehow when people sign up, that they're alerted this exists and that they can refer to it and should refer to it is an important one. And I know the Deputy City Attorney always emphasizes the importance of the criteria that we're applying. So I appreciate those suggestions. Those are good ideas.
Thank you. And the part of the study session from February that we weren't able to get to, as the chair mentioned, was an update on past recommendations that have been made by the Development Review Commission. And it just so happens that there's been 5 since 2020. And so I'm going to give you, I mean, we could spend a lot of time on this, but I think what I'll do is just give you a very brief background and then an update on where we are with those recommendations.
Should we start with the transportation director, or did you want to?
Well, I thought we could go in order.
Okay.
I was going to start from oldest and come up to the newest, and that will segue, I think, nicely so that our city engineer can address the last issue, which I think will probably have the most discussion.
Thank you.
So I'm going to start with a recommendation that the commission made to the city council for a traffic study for the Cruz Meadows Carmen Drive area. And this was back from July of 2020. And this area would, if you're familiar with it, where the Cruz Village Shopping Center is, Carmen Drive, there's a roundabout, it's in the Waluga neighborhood, also on the cusp of Waluga and Lake Forest, and then also the Shorenstein office areas. And the recommendation stemmed from public testimony for a new multifamily development that is on Meadows Road amongst the Shorenstein office buildings. And actually, it's under construction right now. So if you're familiar with that area, it's currently being constructed. There was a lot of testimony about traffic issues during that application. And so the DRC discussed forwarding a recommendation to the city council in order to basically do a comprehensive traffic study for the Cruzway, Meadows Road, Carmen Drive area, because that wasn't the only application that the DRC had seen in the last few years at that time. Before making that recommendation, though, staff had offered and the DRC accepted to have a work session with our engineering staff, which included Ms. Rooney as well as our traffic engineer, before making any sort of recommendation to the council. And that study session was held on July 20th of 2020. And at that time, what engineering staff discussed was the various traffic analyses that had already been performed. And that included a study completed by the city for traffic on Quarry Road that was at the request of the Waluga Neighborhood Association, as well as a study by the city through an independent contractor for the roundabout at the Quarry and Carmen Meadows roundabout. And this would be in addition to several traffic analyses that had been completed for recent projects in that area, including, I believe, that Meadows Road multifamily. After the presentation and discussion, the DRC noted that they were satisfied that the area had been sufficiently studied and that they didn't believe the traffic was as bad as they had been hearing in the testimony. And so at that time, the DRC decided not to forward a recommendation to the city council for further study. So that is what happened with that recommendation. Any questions before I move on to the next item?
I don't have a question, but I have a suggestion. I use this area a lot. Is there some way to do a public information educational program to instruct people on how you use a roundabout? I mean, hand out flyers as people are going through it. I mean, put your directional signal on to let the traffic know that you're getting off. I know it's a tight one. It's not like you go to Europe or DC and they're big ones and you really have to have your direction. I mean, but really, I just...
Well,
I think we could all do with a refresher on that.
Yes.
And other driving points. But I did appreciate that report on the July 2020 memo in our meeting with the city engineer. That's very helpful.
The next item was recommendations that the DRC made to the city council again, or I guess the first one they didn't end up doing, or you didn't end up doing it, but the second one was a recommendation that actually did go to the city council, and this is dated from February of 2020. The memo was actually forwarded to the city manager, who distributed it to city council. It just so happened that that memo came 1 month after the city council had already met for their goal setting, and tree issues, which are usually perennially brought up or annually brought up for their goal setting, they declined to address that at that time. In addition, unfortunately, a month after this memo went to the city council is when we had the COVID pandemic, and the city declared a state of emergency. And so you can imagine that the city was a bit preoccupied at that time with other items, and so I hate to say, the memo fell a little bit to the wayside. And just so you know, the recommendations had to do with the difficulty that the commission was having in some tree appeals, which I know many of you have probably already experienced. And the suggestions included things like creating a handbook containing guidelines for development, providing information at annual tree workshops, which we do already, provide an option for builders or developers to request a meeting with planning staff during conceptual phases of the project, so very early on, review and updating our type 2 application forms to get more complete information from the applicant, and then also asking the council to consider implementing incentives or other tools that would encourage developers to preserve trees, and this could include things like expedited land use process or reduction in development review fees. As far as what happened to those recommendations, I can tell you that the staff did update the application form to try to get more complete application. We do have pretty subjective criteria, so it can be hard to get consistent information from folks. But I have an update on that too. I can tell you that as far as meeting with applicants on site during 2020, that wasn't happening. We weren't meeting with anybody on site. Most people were at home at that time, so that did not occur. So not really much happened with those recommendations, but take heart that things are going to happen, and they're already in the works. In 2022, the council did direct staff to update the state of the urban forest report. The last time that had been done was in 2009. The significance of that is that it establishes baseline data on forest health, and it will help us inform an update to our urban and community forestry plan, which was last updated in 2007. That update to the State of Urban Forest Report was completed in December of 2022. Within a few months afterwards, staff selected a consultant to update the urban and community forestry plan. I happen to be working on that project. It is well underway. Some of you may recall that you were asked to participate in focus groups, which happened over the summer. We also had a public survey, had 582 responses on that. The public engagement section of that has been completed, and they're going to be moving on to the early drafts of the urban community forestry plan next. As part of that, staff forwarded your memo to our consultants, so they have it.
Oh, I was going to ask.
They've got your recommendations, so no, it wasn't all for naught. So have no fear, we are looking into that. In addition, I wanted to let you know that you will be invited to participate in a joint study session with the Planning Commission coming up in January. And that will be a time, and this, you hadn't been involved in the focus group during the summer. All of you are welcome to attend. It'll be a publicly noticed meeting, so everyone can be there. And you'll be given the opportunity to review an early draft of the urban and community forestry plan and provide feedback. So we look forward to inviting you to that. Do you know when in January? I think it's January 22nd. So it is a planning commission meeting because the DRC meetings are a little hard to do joint sessions because we need to be available for applications because of our 120-day obligation. So it's hard, if we have a full agenda, we really need to have the application. So that's why we selected the planning commission meeting.
Well, I really appreciate that update because I had particularly wondered what had happened to that type 2 tree application recommendations. Yeah.
More to come. The next item was a recommendation that the Planning Commission made, the recommendation the DRC made to the Planning Commission, and this was regarding on-street parking, particularly for multifamily use in the downtown redevelopment design district. And it was in response to a condo development on 4th Street, right across from the post office, which is being built right now. And the issue with that is that the downtown redevelopment design district allows on-street parking along the frontage to be counted towards the minimum parking requirement in that zone. And the first edition Forest Hills Neighborhood Association took issue with that and brought that up. Of course, as you can only apply the existing code, the commission addressed a memo or drafted a memo which was given to the planning director at that time, and he shared it with the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission did discuss it. They declined to take action on the recommendation, and I think the main reason for that was at that time There was an executive order from the governor in 2020. I forgot, I don't know if I mentioned the date. This was December of 2020. And she had directed the Land Conservation and Development Commission to adopt rules, which you've all heard of now, the Climate Friendly and Equitable Community Act, which was going to address issues of parking, and this was all in, in the service of reducing climate pollution. And the state rules require that cities plan for basically high-density and mixed-use development in downtowns and town centers, which downtown is one of those. Greater efficiency in parking and alternatives to the automobile for getting around. So that became effective on January 1st, 2023, and that, amongst other things, exempted from parking all land uses located within a half mile of frequent bus transit service, and TriMet bus line 35 qualifies for that. And it applies to a broad corridor which runs all the way along Highway 43 up to Marylhurst and covers the entire downtown Lake Oswego. So that means that parking is no longer required in the TRD, and so the issue of the use of on-street parking to meet minimum parking standards is a moot point at this point. So
Interesting how that all worked out.
yes.
But what developer would not have parking?
Well, and I think that's
There's state laws, and then there's the economy, and if he's going to sell $1 million condos, people are going to have cars.
yeah. I think depending on where it is, especially, I think anybody who wants a viable project and who wants to get financing, they're probably going to have to provide some amount of parking. So even if we didn't require any parking, it doesn't mean that they can't provide the parking. And then the last one before I will then pass it off to our city engineer is a recommendation, and this is more recent, this is from October of 2022, that the DRC made to the City Council to fill a gap in the pathway. And I see that our former chair has left because I know he was very instrumental in this, but this was along the north side of Stafford Road, and it was discussed during the review of the Rasique Park and LORAC, the aquatic center applications. There is a gap in the pathway along the north side of Stafford that's at the corner of Stafford and Overlook near the Lake Ridge High School. And the commission was very concerned because we had these two projects, but we had this gap in the pathway, and neither of them, we couldn't require the pathway to be connected through either of those projects. And so there was a memo that was forwarded to the city manager basically recommending that that be filled in, which made a lot of sense. The city manager met with the parks director as well as the city engineer at the site and directed them at that time to review the feasibility, cost, and funding mechanisms. And one of the issues was whether we needed to obtain additional right-of-way. We weren't sure we could fit the pathway improvements within the existing right-of-way. Turns out we could, which is great news. So they did find it was feasible to construct the improvements within the existing right-of-way. The Parks Department is actually right now in the process of not designing it, but finalizing the design, so very far along in that. And the cost of the pathway is covered in the CIP budget, and construction will occur with a LORAC project slated to be completed in 2024. So
that gap
happy
will be
update.
completed?
It will
Oh,
be.
Jeff would be very excited to hear that. He doesn't know.
He left too early.
How many feet of gap are we?
Gosh, I think it was 150-ish feet, roughly around that. Yeah.
Isn't there a new development that's going to go in over there too?
There is a project where there's a city church, I think is called.
Daycare church.
There is a developer who bought that, who right now is going out to the community. He's being very proactive and trying to get feedback from the community before putting any proposal forward. But it would seem that something will be happening on that site.
Well, thank you for that wonderful report and update.
Yeah. So the last one, I'll introduce Erica Rooney, our city engineer, who I know many of you are familiar with. And this has to do with a follow-up to the Lake Oswego School District bus barn application, which was approved earlier this year. And following that approval, well, actually during the testimony, a lot of folks had some issues with parking and some other issues related to Lakeview Boulevard and Southwest 65th Avenue. And the commission did forward some recommendations to the city engineer in February and after the bus barn was approved. And so I'm introduce Erica Rooney, our city engineer, who will follow up on that recommendation.
Welcome. It's good to have you, and you are our Public Works Director as well. I
That's right.
misstated that earlier.
A couple different hats. Thank you, Commissioners, for having me this evening. As Director Numanoglu mentioned, I'm here to update you on the request that you had sent to us back in February. And as a reminder of what those three things were, it was a result of the bus barn project. And there was a lot of testimony about Lakeview Boulevard and what the applicant could do and what the city could do to make some improvements out there. There weren't things that we could require of the applicant, but nonetheless, the DRC asked that the city engineer take a look at some other things that had been discussed during that time. And particularly that was regarding parking at where the curvature is between Lakeview and 65th, where Lakeview turns into 65th, removing some parking there. Coordinate with Clackamas County to address median improvements out on Boones Ferry Road and 65th, which is a big intersection out there on Boones Ferry Road, closer to the freeway area. And the last one was increase the priority of funding for improvements of streets and sidewalks along Lakeview Boulevard. So we did look at all three of those things, and in particular, we took a fresh look at the parking removal idea on Lakeview Boulevard, and I believe you got this memo, and probably not enough time to look at it in this afternoon. But, excuse me, our traffic engineer, Will Farley, went out there on several different occasions to observe the parking situation around that corner and found not a parking demand at all, found only one car during midday, during afternoons, things like that. However, also, given that there was only one car parking there, it probably wouldn't hurt to take away the parking because it wasn't a demand. So sort of a little bit of a chicken and egg. And it could provide some drivers with a better sense of security about that area because it's a narrow roadway. We talked about that. So there's quite a bit in here when he was doing his original analysis. And again, it's at the corner of 65th and Lakeview where those come together. He ended up removing, does it say the footage? Let me double check. I think he took about 3 or 4 spaces, equal to what would be 3 or 4 spaces out there. That happened in July or August, and so school's back in now. We're going to take another look at it just to make sure things are still okay, that for some reason parking demand hasn't gone up. I don't think it has because there hasn't been any change in the tenants out there to increase the demand for parking. So far we've heard nothing positive or negative from anybody out there, and so that's a good sign.
So the parking that was there has been limited or removed altogether?
Removed, not limited. Limited parking when you're out in the other parts of the town are really hard for us to enforce. It's a little easier to do timed parking in a downtown area where it's concentrated and we can use our CSOs, but it's harder to do time-limited parking out in an area where there's nobody to really watch it. And again, what we observed is there wasn't any demand for it anyway. Nobody was parking there anyway. It didn't seem like on 3 or 4 different occasions he did go out. So far, again, neither the tenants who are out there, the property owners are out there who have questioned it, or people who had concerns about it before. So no news is good news, perhaps. So it should be just fine.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, we'll continue to monitor it, though, just in case, now that school's back in and the buses and whatnot have started. The second issue was the, here it is, Boones Ferry Road median request. And what's difficult about that is Boones Ferry Road in that area is a Clackamas County roadway segment, and 65th is Tualatin's. But the traffic study that was done for the bus barn specifically indicated that the level of service at that intersection was level of service C. And in the traffic engineering world, that's pretty darn good. It's not perfect, but it's good. It's clearly above operational standards. And so there was no requirement put on the bus barn from the county to fix that intersection because it wasn't failing. Usually you have to make improvements with a new development if the intersection's already failing, and we can't add to it. So Clackamas County, we shared with them what our concerns were, what the concerns were from the, excuse me, from the testimony from the neighborhood, because there is a lot of Clackamas County neighbors who came to this this proposal. And a lot of Clackamas, mostly it's all Clackamas County out there. And so we've shared that with the county, but for the county, it's just quite frankly not a priority at the moment. They'll continue to watch it for safety purposes and things like that, but at this moment, it's operating well and there's not a safety issue associated with the need to extend the median length or the left turn pocket length. So continue.
Well, we appreciate you bringing, the city bringing that to the county's attention, our concern over that point.
Right, and again, it's one of those things, they have the same kind of rules that we do regarding development in that we can't require things of above and beyond the impact of the development. That's the generalized version of it. The lawyer could put it in better terms, but especially something that far off-site from where this development was, from the bus barn location, and it was already operating at an acceptable level. Excuse me. The last item was increase the priority for Lakeview Boulevard improvements. And Lakeview Boulevard is a neighborhood collector, very low volume one. Quite frankly, it's probably, could possibly be our lowest volume. Oftentimes the volumes out there are under 1,000 cars a day, which is what we call a local street normally. But it is a neighborhood collector because of the area that it serves. So it's a, and it obviously has a very interesting dichotomy of industry on one side and homes on the other.
Yes.
Tough mix, right? But we have tried several times for grants, a couple economic development grants. We have tried for, I think, a Safe Routes to School one once before as well. But what we find out is that because the volumes are low, because there are no accidents, it's hard to compete with those areas that have it worse than us. I hate to say that, but that's often the case when, you know, agencies throughout the state are competing and they have more difficult situations than we do. Not to say we aren't continuing to look for ideas or opportunities, so we'll keep our eyes on that. But it is, it's a tough one to apply for federal or state grants, and at some point, maybe we won't do that, and maybe we'll, from economic development, choose to make this a priority at the city council level. But right now, as you know, the funding that we have in the street fund, the priority is focused on pathways, particularly those associated with schools. So that's where the majority of our funding, besides maintenance activities and things like that, for the street fund are going. Not to say things couldn't swing. Economic development out there may change, and that might be an opportunity. We had the Southwest Employment Area study before COVID, probably 5 years ago now, that identified what the cross-section should be. We have things ready to go, if you will. It's a lot of money to turn that into the proper kind of roadway to handle both industrial and local streets and accommodate both of those needs. And it just hasn't been the priority yet, but we'll keep looking. We have it up there every time one of these economic development type grants come along, we'd say, should we take another stab at it? And we will do that. So any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Well, I appreciate the explanation about the suggestions of giving more priority to improvements of streets and sidewalks along Lakeview Boulevard. During my time serving on the Planning Commission and on the DRC, from time to time, issues will come up, and residents of that area will express strong concern about their safety. So I do appreciate your explanation for where we are, but I think it's also important to continue to monitor the situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it was something that the DRC was concerned about in connection with the so-called bus barn application. So, Commissioners, are there questions of Director Rooney?
Yes. First, let me start by saying I recall staff's report at the time that we did this, which is totally consistent with what your now conclusion is regarding Boone's Ferry and regarding the Lakeview. But I'm really pleased that you were able to find something that would improve the parking. I think that that's, even though it may appear small, it's a significant response to the community. I was wondering, what is the status of the appeal on the bus barn?
Tomorrow at 11:30, if you have YouTube access, you can watch oral argument before the Land Use Board of Appeals.
Have it on my calendar.
Very timely, yes.
Yes, yes.
Can I ask a question as a corollary and not necessarily, what happens to the old bus barn property?
At Lake Grove Elementary?
Yeah, the one over by Lake Grove Elementary.
I don't know that we know.
Tennis courts, I mean pickleball courts, or what are we talking
The
about?
school has not indicated to us what their plans are for that once they move over. I think that for a while, my recollection is that they are going to be operating from both locations for a little while. And then once some nearby street improvements are made, then they'll move everything over. But we haven't heard yet what they plan on doing with the former
So
bus.
it's school property?
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
it's still school property.
Thank you.
Those are good questions for the school district. If people want to go to the school district board to ask those questions. Not the city.
Commissioners, are there other questions of Director Rooney? Oh, thank you so much for staying late in the day.
Absolutely.
Addressing this. We appreciate your detailed explanation on these points.
Yeah, happy to help. And anytime you have traffic questions or things like that, don't hesitate to reach out to us directly. It's fine.
Well, thank you very much. And Director Numanoglu, I am really grateful for your review of the outcome of those various memoranda the DRC has written over the last 3 years. We don't do it often, I think, but it's at least good to get some feedback on what happens, because so often it seems like it just goes out into this stratosphere and we never know what happened, if anything. So I found it very interesting and useful.
Happy to do it.
Might I ask, just to follow up on that, we just heard about 4 or 5 specific cases where concerns that were identified in the DRC process were passed on to either city council or some city group, the city engineer. Is this an appropriate and is a way to communicate that kind of perspective? I'm not quite sure what we're conveying to you other than a perspective on what might be technical issues or might be community concerns and so forth. Is this an appropriate mechanism, or do you just find it a pain in the neck that these commissioners are bringing something?
Could be both. Well, because we're not a planning commission, I think the idea initially, at least in my service on the DRC, was from time to time, we may see issues that we want to refer to city council or planning commission for their review, or the city engineer. That's my view of what we're doing.
Yeah, and I think that was the point. I think we see it that way, but they have an equally valid perspective, especially you have an equally valid perspective on whether this is an appropriate mechanism, or is it just to make work?
Well, what I would say is, I do think that it is appropriate for the commission to do that, and I think it's staff's job to make sure that we kind of, guide you into something that will be more productive, or try to guide you to something that would be more productive. But it doesn't mean that we can always solve the issue, of course.
Right.
But certainly, as the commission that is tasked with applying the code and knows it better than a lot of the other commissions, you're certainly well appointed to make certain recommendations to the city council or the planning commission, who do set policy for the city.
But in the case of both the parking issue and the sidewalk issue, there's no code issue there. It was crystal clear that the projects were consistent with code. Staff had told us that. We were supportive of that decision and recommendation. But these were other projects that might be responsive to, some of the concerns often that have come from the public. And, at least I don't ever want to be telling Erica what to do or what her priorities should be from you. But it is a mechanism for us to talk about an issue that we think might be addressed, or the priority might be raised. And again, I ask the question, is that an appropriate thing for us to be doing from your point of view?
And I'll speak from my point of view. So when I watch these cases come forward, you're quite limited on what you can discuss and what you can solve related to a project. But I think you're absolutely right in that there's these ancillary things that are going on in the neighborhood, if you will, and we can't have that discussion during the hearings as much because it's not pertinent to the statutes that you're supposed to follow, right? So I think that this is a good mechanism for you to be able to say, it could be any one of you or some other citizen calling in to say, could you remove the parking on Lakeview Boulevard? We would look at that, say yes or no. This is a way for you to do that as well as an organized body, and gives it some weight, quite frankly, because it's good. It's something you heard a lot of during the testimony, and you'd like us to take a fresh look at something or dive a little deeper. Then we can come back and talk to you, not related to a case, but related to just specific requests. It makes it a little easier for us to talk, because sometimes you'll know when we're sitting here or here during testimony, we're like, we can't talk about that. You know, there's a little bit of refrain that we can't go into the details of something that's off-site. So I don't mind it. I guess that's a long way of saying I don't mind this mechanism.
And I would say that it makes us less siloed. It's just DRC only, Planning Commission only, City Council only. We really, really should be communicating, and if it has to be through our people and staff, that's fine with me.
Good, thanks very much.
Yeah.
Both of you.
And we do try to be, I think, somewhat circumspect and not abuse the privilege of writing memos every week. But typically, in my recollection, just reviewing these, frequently it's coming out of a hearing and the public is here and the commissioners have a heightened concern about an issue and want to take some constructive action by referring it to another body, bringing this issue to their attention, as you say, for perhaps additional scrutiny or higher priority of being addressed, and not being overbearing, referring it to the other arm of the city or administrative staff or professional staff to evaluate. And so that's really what we're asking for, I think, when we do that. So hopefully we won't abuse the privilege.
No, I appreciate it. And I look back at the one that I particularly enjoyed doing was the conversation about the roundabout, because that is so confusing to people. And there are old ways of calculating level of service at a roundabout, and then the new industry standard is this. And you can't get into that per se during the individual hearings as much, but there was an opportunity to educate everyone by coming at it outside of a specific case. So there's a time and a place for that, and I think that's a perfect example of one that I appreciated. Like, yes, we can come in, we can have that conversation, because you were hearing from all sides that there's a problem or there's not a problem, but what are you supposed to believe? And it gave us an opportunity to come in and educate and inform about that. So I appreciate that.
Thank you for those comments. And thanks again for being here this evening.
You bet.
Do we have a schedule review and management update?
Yeah, very quick. Of course, you have your upcoming meeting on the 16th, which will be via Zoom at 6 p.m. We don't have anything scheduled after that, but I will let you know that we anticipate there may be an item scheduled in November. And of course, we have the holiday week of Thanksgiving. I believe you meet on the 20th is one of your scheduled meeting dates. I don't know if we're meeting then, but if you could let Kat know if you're going to be out of town, that would be very helpful in letting us know whether we would have a quorum if we do need to schedule something. And just so you know, the item that is coming up would be the water treatment plant here in Foothills. So
wastewater.
A big project. Wastewater, sorry.
Yes,
Wastewater treatment plant. Yes, that's a big difference.
Oh, that's an important hearing, sure. Important application. Any other questions or comments of our professional staff this evening?
I have one question.
Yes.
I was curious. So why did that come?
That's a great question. The reason why it came to the DRC is really not having much to do with the addition. That could have been a staff level decision. It was the conditional use permit. That is classified as a major development, and it is required to be reviewed by the Development Review Commission. So, of course, you consolidate when they have both the development review portion as well as the conditional use. We consolidate that application, so both of them were brought before you.
Why is it a conditional use? That's,
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because the golf
it already
course.
has a restaurant there, I mean.
Right. Well, the golf course existed since 1924, but it wasn't annexed into the city until 1999. And so it has long either been in the county or it's been, when it was annexed into the city, it became a legal non-conforming use. So they don't have a conditional use permit, and they didn't get one in the county either. It wasn't required at that time. So in order, I think it just solves a lot of issues in that they just get their conditional use permit, so they've taken care of it, they've got their conditional use permit, so now when they come in and they do these DR mods like they were doing, small things like that, they wouldn't technically usually come before the commission unless we felt that there was some neighborhood controversy. We could always refer it to the commission, but something smaller like that would be a staff level review typically.
Yeah, Evan said that in his report. He had a paragraph that addressed that historical discontinuity and said it's time to clean that up. It is a major project. So.
Yes, thank you for that question and comment. If there's nothing else and there are no objections, we'll adjourn the meeting this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
My dead fly.
Project, your concerns about
Yeah,
learning
I'm
to
sitting
use
there
the
watching,
right
all of a
of way,
sudden
send
this thing comes
everybody
up, and
in
that's when you,
Massachusetts for a month.
bam.